Welcome to the Silicon Slopes podcast. Today I'm here with Josh Freeman, who's founding partner at Freeman-Lovell. How are you, Josh?
Doing great. Thanks, Garrett.
And so a founding partner at Freeman-Lovell means that you are an attorney, correct?
I am an attorney, for better or for worse.
Probably for better.
I don't know about that.
No, we'll talk about some of the cool things that you guys are doing and helping entrepreneurs of all shapes and sizes. But tell us a little bit about Freeman-Lovell, and then kind of being a startup attorney and building out your business from that kind of point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started Freeman-Lovell. It's almost been 6 years now with my partner, Steve Lovell. And it kind of came together in an interesting way. You know, I had gotten to a point where I had built a book of business big enough that I could kind of dictate, you know, where I worked and how that went down. And so I, you know, started talking to a lot of law firms around town, and ultimately found in each one there were things that I loved and things that I, you know, didn't want to be part of my life. And so I went through the process of kind of saying, okay, if I could have this aspect from this firm and this one from this one and this piece from that firm, it would be perfect for me. And so I sat down with Steve, and he had just left an in-house counsel job, and so we were talking about kind of solo practices, and I explained kind of my experience and said, these are all the things I'm looking for. And, you know, and he said, yeah, me too. That's really cool. And, you know, so we decided we wanted to build this law firm really around the idea of allowing attorneys to be more entrepreneurial in how they do things, allow a lot of autonomy, keep our overhead extremely low so that we can afford to represent small businesses, entrepreneurs, and so that we can afford to really build our lives around the practice instead of, you know, the other way around. And, you know, it was a ton of work going through it, but super rewarding. So, but yeah, I mean, I think one of the really interesting things that I found out is, you know, I figured going into starting this law firm that it was just going to be pretty easy because, you know, it's like I'll set up a, you know, co-working space somewhere. I got my laptop, can kind of do the work and everything that way. But then as I started, you know, working with Steve, and we, you know, created kind of this vision that we feel is a really great place to practice law, because there's a lot of really crappy places to practice law.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, shortly after that, we had another attorney from a bigger firm downtown reach out to us and say, hey, my accountant buddy told me what you guys were doing. I want to join in, you know. And then a couple months later, we had another guy kind of approach us, and we saw this kind of natural growth. And then, you know, realizing like I have to build like something that the platform that's sustainable for this kind of growth, you know. And so, you know, working through years and years of iterations of financial modeling and getting all of that, you know, the right way, making sure we have, you know, our revenue sharing between partners set up right. And, you know, all of that has just been, you know, it's just a ton of work. And, you know, and then there's the practice of law on top of that. And so, you know, it's been a really fun journey, and it's really, really rewarding because we have set up something where, you know, I've been able to really work with, you know, entrepreneurs who are at the earliest stages of their business and watch them grow through the process, raise money, you know, and sell their businesses, you know, for a heck of a lot more money than they ever imagined. And so it's been an awesome ride. Yeah,
very cool. And a couple of things there. You get a kind of a la carte puzzle piece, all the best things out there, and create your own, and do it with a kind of a new team. But then also like building your business as you help other companies build their businesses. You're all lawyers, right? So you all understand what a good operating agreement and all of that is. So I assume there was some back and forth on that type of thing that might not exist in a normal startup where they're like, I don't know, everyone gets 33.33%. But very cool. So 6 years ago, kind of building out the concept, building out your team, making sure your house is in order. What are some of the things you were able to take from your brain and other law firms that you know would be advantageous for startups?
One of the things that we did that I think is a little bit different is most places just have here's your overhead number, and that can range from a few thousand to a few tens of thousand, depending on the law firm you're working for. Something that we did that I think is interesting and different is we divided overhead into two different camps. We have mandatory overhead, which we try to keep extremely low. These are just the basic things that are required to practice law. And then we have pieces of optional overhead, things like, dedicated office space, use of paralegals, use of other attorneys and things like that. And so it's not just dictated, here's the firm overhead and take it or leave it, but, you have some firm overhead you have to pay, and then you have other tools and resources that you can tap into because of, having the number of attorneys to be able to support that. And I think that was one thing that was really cool and has been really helpful for attorneys. We see a lot of people who, really want to have a more autonomous practice, but they only have about a half a book of business. And if they were to take that to, a bigger firm to support kind of the commercial practice, the overhead's going to eat up any revenue that they can create. Whereas with our platform, with a half a book of business and a few referrals from the other attorneys in the firm, you can make a living for your family while you build out, the practice that you ideally want. And so that's been really cool to see for those attorneys who have been able to do that.
Yeah. A lot more flexibility, it sounds like. And so for a book of business, is it a correct assumption that you don't want too much, because then you might let some flounder and not provide good service, and you want enough to where you're making good money and a good living? Is that correct?
That's right. It's an impressive balance that you have to make. And, and what we try to do in order to, create, a really good balance is, you have to carefully monitor that. And then we've also created, specific sub teams who are able to do a lot of the, the legwork and heavy lifting on large projects like mergers and acquisitions projects or fundraising projects or large corporate restructuring type projects. And so as kind of an attorney who's managing a relationship, you have a team where you can go and say, hey, I've got this project, we need it done, in the next few days or week or whatever it may be. And then they can use their resources. There's usually about 4 people per team. Then they can, really make it happen. And so that's allowed us to really grow, with our clients and make sure that we maintain really good, service. We also do a lot of automation, both in legal processes as well as document preparation. And that's also helped to maintain, a uniform product that we provide to our clients. And so, the operating agreements, like you talked about, come out with, very similar things. So it allows for different attorneys to quickly recognize and understand what's happening. And we've put a lot of work and a lot of, variations and are continually adding to it and taking away and just making sure it's just right. And so, those are some of the things we do. But yeah, it's a really careful balance because you got to treat all of your clients right. They're entrusting you with the most important thing in your life. And that's one of the difficult things about practicing law is everything, regardless of size, it's always the most important thing going on in that client's life.
Yeah. Yeah. Anytime I've worked in a building where there are law firms, in this building we're currently in Lehigh. In fact, I was meeting somebody to go duck hunting at 4 a.m. on a Sunday morning, and there was a couple of conference rooms where, you could visibly see there was dozens of people in and around, and then the entire floor was lit up. So I'd assume that was a kind of a fire drill, and something needed to get done probably by that next Monday. Does that still happen with a firm kind of like yours where you got to circle the wagons every once in a while?
Yeah, it depends on the project. Last month we had a period of time where we closed 3 mergers and acquisitions deals in 3 weeks, and we did 2, equity fundraising deals in that same time. It was a lot of work, nights and weekends and, that sort of a thing. But yeah, it's one of those things where you can't, we can't dictate on our clients when they have big events happen in their, in their lives. And so we just try to create the right structure to be able to support that and make it all happen. And, and so that's what we do. But, it's really fun, when you get involved in that.
Yeah. Not being a lawyer, though, I've been victimized by Murphy's Law a lot, where it's like a bunch of bad stuff happens at the same time, or even a bunch of good stuff, and you just have to deal with it. So even though you guys are attorneys, you're not immune from Murphy's Law.
Absolutely.
Got it. Okay, so you guys have also come up with some products and ideas that are really cool for the entrepreneur, right?
Yes.
Oftentimes, entrepreneurs don't know much about anything other than maybe the product or the software or the fundraising. And there's a lot of other moving parts that can trip up even the best, right? And for whatever reasons, they don't get their house in order, whether it's time, just knowledge, or they might know, like, I'm kind of doing this wrong, but I got to keep trucking on the
Mm-hmm.
product or the company, and then I'll sort it out later. And I assume you've got a lot of horror stories there. But what are some of the products and tools and services that you guys have incorporated to minimize that type of thing?
Yeah, I mean that's one of the big things that like small businesses and entrepreneurs deal with is trying to manage cash flows, and lawyers were expensive by nature, but we don't want to get in the way of people to have to make that decision of do we hire a lawyer, make sure we're protected, or do we spend it on marketing or product development or whatever it may be, right? And so we've seen a lot of companies who have come to us, at a point where, they've made a lot of great things happen. Maybe they've raised some money from an angel investor, and that angel investor said, "Hey, use my attorneys here," and they snuck in, a little tricky anti-dilution type provision for that investor, and then we have to go through the process of unwinding that, and sometimes, depending on how bad it is, we haven't been able to, and it's devastating to these companies where, we've seen companies that have had, term sheets on the table but haven't been able to accept them because of an investor and had to go a different direction and pivot with their business entirely. And it's kind of crazy, so I mean, what we want to do is, we've created kind of different, different ways to approach it. We think, the practice of law, has traditionally been one of, really personalized professional services, and that needs to be the case, and that's the ideal case, but people can't always afford that. And so what we've tried to do is we've tried to provide different tools through automation and things that way, much like a legal Zoom or one of those businesses, but with the forms that we actually use. And, it's the same things that we go through. We just try to make the questions translated into plain English so, an entrepreneur can understand them and provide them resources to understand and make the right decisions. And what we've seen with that is, companies that are just starting out can come in and get, a very good operating agreement. And then they have also the option and resource to be able to talk to one of us just for a few minutes and, not have us custom draft something that costs a ton of money. And so, they can do that with, operating agreements, with shareholder agreements, with, different employment type of, agreements and things that way to make sure that their intellectual property remains theirs and it doesn't go to some contractor and, because they don't understand exactly how the laws work and, different things that way. And so that's been a really great way to help some of those companies. It's like, I can't quite afford this, but we know that we need it. And then they have the process to kind of work through some of those things. It's a form that we're familiar with. So, what happens is sometimes people will go and download a form off the internet and then ask us to review it. And the challenge is if we don't know that form, we can't trust it. And so we have to read it very, very carefully in order to give advice. And so oftentimes it's just as expensive or more expensive than using the same form that we know and trust. And so if you combine those two, we can provide services, that are very affordable for everyone. And we also try to structure things in a way where if a client needs something but wants to balance out the, cost, we set up different like subscription-based programs or other things that way to spread out costs so they have a better understanding of, what your legal spend is going to be over a year instead of just getting hit with one big massive bill.
Yeah. And these, ready forms and automation, they take friction out for the entrepreneur, right?
Right.
There's a bit of friction for you guys in creating these and thinking through it all, and then the benefit to the entrepreneurs is less friction for them, and it enables them to keep moving at a steady clip and feel like confident and secure in the next year of their company's lifestyle. Correct?
Absolutely. And it also, I mean, it also helps on the attorney side too, because we use that automation to prepare all of our base documents. And so, we get something that's 99% done, if not 100% done most of the time. And it makes our process so much quicker, so much more efficient, and so much more affordable. And so, we've seen the benefit, both for the client using it directly as well as it being integrated into our, work processes.
Yeah. So imagine if you're doing that, there's a level of confidence in, like, if Daddy Warbucks showed up today and had $1 billion to buy, my company, I could with confidence sell it to him.
That's right.
Because every dashboard in my brain's got a green check box, right? Like, cap table's good, operating agreement's good. Whereas a lot of times I've heard, like, here's an offer, and you're like, I don't know,
right,
if I can actually do that,
Yeah, that's the goal. Before I started Freeman-Lovell, one of the firms I worked with, we worked with a lot of private equity groups. And, one of the processes that I would do is I would structure the deal and then go look at all of their legal documents to see if everything was in order and see what we needed to worry about, And so, I've taken that same exercise and try to apply that to my clients now, so that it's like when that time comes, like you said, they've got checks in all of the boxes, and, know that they have, all of the intellectual property assignment agreements that they need. And they've got the cap table's clean and solid, and there's not these straggler promises that you have to go spend way too much money in order to get a deal done on. And, you got, your IP registered and up to date and all of the agreements you need. And so, yeah, that's absolutely right. And that's a place where, clients can save a ton of money, is getting that done early.
Yeah. Well, there's money, and then there's, like, bandwidth in your brain, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can either spend the time worrying about that, or your next good invention or product idea.
Exactly.
And what types of companies have you guys found are kind of in your wheelhouse as far as working with and representing?
So we love to work with companies of a lot of different shapes and sizes. We've worked with a lot of e-commerce companies. We've worked with a lot of technology companies. We've worked with a lot of service companies. What we've found is, we're a really good solution, especially for the bootstrapped entrepreneurs. And we really like working with them, and they align a lot with our vision, because, we're all at Freeman-Lovell because we have some entrepreneurship in us, and we also have a love for kind of autonomy and being our own bosses and being able to run things. And we find that same personality a lot in kind of the bootstrap folks who, maybe have a few angel investments here or there and that sort of a thing. But helping them kind of navigate that and navigate the growth and get to a really good exit is probably where we're the very best.
Yeah, for sure. And then for folks out there listening that might think this is a good service for them, what's the best way to kind of get ready to interact with you guys? And obviously you've got your website and all of that, but what should they do to call you guys and be ready to have like productive meetings and onboarding?
Yeah, I mean, usually the process for us goes is, whenever we bring on a new client, there's kind of the element of us just needing to know what they currently have. So, if you're an LLC, making sure you have your certificate of organization and operating agreements and whatever other agreements you have kind of gathered up and those kinds of things. But, we really try to make it as easy as a process as possible for people. And so, honestly, like, go to our website. You can text us through there or send us an email. We try to communicate the same way our clients are used to communicating, and so we try not to require phone calls and in-person meetings unless our clients want to do that, and we love to do that. But if they want to text us, we stay pretty transparent, and my clients have my cell phone number and can reach me anytime, and I trust them and they treat me well that way, and I do the same for them. And so yeah, I mean, just find us.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to join today, Josh. I always like when the service providers are thinking along the same line as their clients and not doing kind of square peg, round hole type of thing. They're trying to take the friction out and make it good for the entrepreneur. So thank you for joining.
Hey, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.